Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Horatio Capote here at the Dent Neurologic Institute. And I basically wanted to see if we could discuss a few things in the light of the current events. Um, so, as you saw by the title, this discussion has to do with anxiety and stress. And certainly there's been a whole lot of anxiety and stress out there throughout the world, really, right? So the first thing to understand is that anxiety is a perfectly normal emotion. It's how we're built. It's probably a signal to our brains that something is up. Something may need to be adjusted, or we may need to be careful about something, right? So don't necessarily be afraid of it. Anxiety is a normal and important emotion that we have, and probably, right, appropriate, very appropriate. Eventually, the question arises, at what level does this ongoing anxiety and stress become a disorder of some type? And in general, we would say a couple of things. One, that it would last for about 2 weeks, right? You'd want it to be not just a blip, but an ongoing issue. And also that it affects our function in some kind of way. So it affects our function either interpersonally with other people, or occupationally, or physiologically affecting our sleep, all things like this. Then we would say, well, this is something a little bit more serious and we should be looking to deal with it. One important thing to understand that gives sort of meaning to the current situation we're all going through with the coronavirus is that the unknown is extremely stressful, right? When we don't know, we can't predict, we're figuring it out, that is tough on us. There have been some very interesting studies conducted at Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute in New York City. And what they discovered is that it was much more stressful to await the results of a biopsy, await the results of some testing, than to actually hear, yes, you have cancer. And, because once you know, now you have a game plan, right? Now you're not up in the air trying to figure it out, all stressed out. Once you know, even if it's bad news, now you know, here's what we need to be doing. So this current situation, we're learning about the behavior of this virus. We don't know where it's lurking. All these things, all these unknowns just add to that overall level of stress that we're going through communally. And that's another important factor, right? We are a community, right? We are all in this together. And, community connectedness is much more than just physical, right? So we're connected emotionally to each other, right? Our brains, our neocortex, our limbic systems are actually built that way, right? The different parts of our brain are built to respond to each other. So we're all connected emotionally, even if we're not physically as connected lately as we would often like to be. And also, for some people, the connection can also be quite spiritual, right? So if you're a spiritual type of person, then that may be another level of connectedness for you as well. So we need to remember that that we're all part of the human race, at least most of us, right? This is my dad humor, and that we're going through things together, we're learning together, and as much as possible, we're helping each other out. So how do we do that, right? Well, stay informed from credible sources. The Centers for Disease Control, right? Credible scientific sources. There's a lot of unusual information out there on the internet, right? So make sure that you're kind of paying attention to what your source of information is and what the credibility of that information is, because there are all kinds of weird conspiracy theories and things like that that are unfortunately like ill-informed, right? Pandemics have existed throughout the course of humanity. What happens now is that we have airlines and we have technology that we all find out about things instantly, right? So in the past, a pandemic could wipe out a country and then go on to the next country and maybe take 10 years to circle the globe. And so everything is accelerated now as a result of our new technologies. At least that's my perspective on it. So what do we do in the face of all this unknown and all this stress and all this stuff going on? First of all, remember that we're all human beings connected to each other, and be kind to each other, be polite to each other. Be understanding of each other, because it is a stressful time. Also, take care of your bodies, right? So what does that entail? Just really basics, adequate sleep, good nutrition, which could include dark chocolate every once in a while, right? And exercise, right? So these things that keep our bodies intact and keep us going are important. We should not sort of skimp on this. And actually then, something I alluded to a second ago, why not treat yourself, right? But within reason. Within reason. Why do I say that? Because I know, I don't get these gray hairs for no reason at all. I've been around for a while. I know that somebody's going to say, oh, Dr. Capote said I could treat myself, so I could have a half liter of vodka any old time and it'd be fine. No. Treat yourself within reason, within the bounds of normalcy. I don't know, whatever it is for you, a little key lime pie, some fun event, some music that you delight in, any of these things. I guess all of these things speak to different people differently, right? So I think these are some just basic ideas of things that we can do to keep level-headed in the face of the current environment, and to just sort of keep ourselves in balance as well. I think that there have been some questions come up, and by all means feel free to send in questions. You could do so anonymously. I'll try to answer them as honestly to the best of my knowledge. I will tell you ahead of time, I do not know the winning numbers in the lotto ahead of time, so that's not one I could answer easily, but I'll try my best.
So our first question is for parents specifically. There's a lot of parents who are homeschooling for the first time, and this can be very stressful for them. So are there any tips that you would give those parents on how to deal with this new routine that they're going through?
Okay, so you know, it is a challenge. I think it always pays to be honest and not make believe you know stuff when you don't. You can actually teach a lot to your kids by modeling, right? Like, hey, that's a good question. I don't know. Let's learn together. Let's figure this out together. Let me show you how I've learned to seek out information and do some joint problem solving. Make it a bit of an adventure. It is an opportunity to strengthen those ties with your kids. You know, you see them more frequent. Now, mind you, you know, everybody in close proximity for prolonged periods of time can get on each other's nerves. So, you know, that's understandable. But I think, you know, being honest, remembering that you are the parent. Do not give the impression that you're like the buddy. You are the parent. You have some leadership to exert, and some delineation of what is right and wrong and things like that. Um, but yeah, turn it into an adventure where both of you are uh, sort of co-learners, maybe, and you're still the guider and the leader because you have more experience on how to get questions answered. And of course, you know, you do have a greater body of knowledge than than the student. And then on top of it, it's likely that after some amount of time, you'll start kicking up memories of the information that you do know, and you'll start being able to retrieve that more easily. You know, like anything, it's you know, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you get at it. So it's a challenge, but I would invite you to cognitively reframe it as an adventure. It's a joint event. And by the way, it should really give us great empathy for our teachers in the community. You know, teachers are out there, some say probably not being rewarded as well they ought, or at least appreciated as much as they should be. So, you know, the next time you see a teacher, just like we do with our veterans and thank them for their service, I think this will give us a much greater appreciation for that as well. I know I have a lot to owe to my teachers, all the way back from elementary school, but certainly my high school teachers. Shout out to Christopher Columbus High School in Miami, Florida. They were wonderful and have taught me great things that I remember to this day.
So our next question is also about kids and children, and it's, are there any tips that you have on how to discuss what's going on with them?
Sure. Again, you know, some honesty, some information. Try not to editorialize too much. You know, oh, this is because this, that, and this. It's just like, well, there's this virus that has arisen, and viruses, you know, they tend to change and mutate over time. You see it as an opportunity, right? And what's a virus? Is it a bacteria? Is it more of a biochemical structure? Does it have life? What is it? You know, so all those interesting opportunities to learn science are there, right? Depending on the age of the child, of course. But it's something that's out there. It can make people sick, and we're dealing with it. We're learning about it as we're dealing with it at the same time, and we're trying our best. And honestly, we are probably better equipped than we ever have been in the history of humanity. We have a lot of very bright people thinking about this thing. We have a lot of excellent technology, and so we're putting all of these things to bear to answer these important questions.
Can CBD help with your anxiety?
Yes, absolutely. And this is from someone that I was originally a little bit skeptic, but it actually does turn out that CBD is, which by the way, is extractable from both hemp as well as from cannabis, right? So it turns out that it has a beneficial effect on anxiety and probably sleep as well. We actually are proposing some studies on that in the near future. It's just waiting for some FDA issues with the federal government to be able to do that. But it's, as you know, you can pretty much pick up CBD nowadays, I guess, at the corner store or the gas station or whatever. Mind you, there are products out there. One of our Uber medical director, Dr. Laszlo Metzler, actually went about purchasing CBDs from all these different places and actually had them laboratory analyzed. And he found out that some of them only had 1% CBD in it, but they're still calling it CBD and selling it out there. So that Latin phrase caveat emptor, right? Buyer beware, that there's different products there of different qualities. And so you would like to have something that is laboratory tested and certified, actual CBD. And I think over time we'll see a lot more studies showing the efficacy of it. So double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that will begin to show us its benefits on the, say, the sleep architecture and on the overall issue of curbing anxiety.
Do you have any tips on how to talk to the elderly, whether it's your parents or your grandparents, to make sure that they're taking everything seriously without them feeling like you're talking down to them or like they're a child?
Sure. As always, you speak genuinely to people. You start out probably by saying, hey, the reason I'm having this conversation with you is because, I love you and I want you to do well. So whatever information I'm about to share with you is not coming from a bad place. It's coming from a good place. I guess without knowing the very specific situations, it's hard to give specific advice. Certainly, it may be hard to put things in context, for some people, because they've never experienced anything like this and they've been around for a while, It may also be that some older people, they hear this information that they're at much greater risk and they're anxious. They're exceedingly concerned. I spoke to someone yesterday um, in a long-term care facility, and one of her neighbors had just passed away about 4 days ago. I don't suspect from anything, not from the virus or anything. I think it was just her time. But certainly, what happens, another of your cohort is gone, and you're faced with your own mortality, right? That's scary. When is it going to be my turn? And then on top of it, there's this other new danger, which threatens your life expectancy for sure, which is the coronavirus. So it's I can see it being very hard for people, beyond their 60s and 70s to deal with things. So, but as always, we give honest information. We express our caring and our love, which is why we're sharing information, and we take it from there. So I think if you're coming from a genuine place, if you're not looking to be manipulative, that shines through.
And would you give that same advice to if you know someone who is not following the guidelines that are in place? Is that kind of the same way you would talk to them? How would you reach out to someone who is not social distancing, they're not doing the recommendations that are out there? How would you bring up that topic?
Well, I have a tendency to try to use humor, so I would probably say something like, hey, I know you're Superman and invincible, but listen, I'm worried about you. I mean, people are dying, and it's best to take this thing seriously. I am, right? I am for myself and for my family. And guess what? You're part of my family, either immediate or the greater family of humanity. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't look to me like you're taking this as seriously as you should. There could be so many reasons. People could be having some cognitive problems. People could be really engaging in a lot of denial. I mean, we call these things denial, rationalization. We call these defense mechanisms. There's a reason for that, right? We defend ourselves by utilizing these techniques. Now, there turns out to be a hierarchy of defense mechanisms, right? So the most primitive defense mechanisms are denial. Even more primitive than that is loss of contact with reality, is hallucinations, and things like that. But the most sophisticated defense mechanisms are altruism and humor, right? So people that are altruistic, they look out for others, they engage in philanthropy and caring for others, and people that are funny. Those are the more sophisticated ego coping mechanisms that we have. And in the middle, there's different ones. And interestingly enough, right, if you look at the development of the human being, you actually see that we tend to go through these different defense mechanisms as we mature. So little kids could probably spend a whole lot of time in denial and anger and all kinds of stuff, and then there comes that magical time in adolescence when everything seems funny and people are just laughing up a storm no matter what. And I know for me as a kid, I discovered Monty Python and I thought that was hilarious. So you just see people going through all these stages. Unfortunately, some people seem to get stuck in a stage, right? You gotta help them move a little across those borders.
And then another question is what to do with isolating when you're by yourself all the time, if you live alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, that's the whole idea of connectedness in one way or another. So certainly there are a lot of online communities that occur. There are faith communities that are meeting online. I heard yesterday about a church that is basically operating almost like a drive-in theater, right? People are pulling up in their cars and listening to the sermon on a screen, and sometimes they honk the horn instead of amen, whatever, but they're connected. They're connected, even though they're not that physically connected. There turns out to be online AA meetings and NA meetings. So people are engaging in the fellowship of sobriety that way. So I think we'll see a lot more of that happening. And honestly, there can be great benefit to that as well. You can get a different sort of experience, but a connection on another level as well. I've noticed that, so we adopted telemedicine very quickly, and interestingly enough, I've noticed that, and not to brag on myself, but I consider myself observant, and I think I listen to people and hear them out. But now with telemedicine, I listen more attentively. I hear, I seek out more nuance perhaps. And I also have noted that the people I'm connecting with, patients are, sometimes it's just a phone call and they're better at describing things. They're paying more attention to these details and telling me about it. So, it may make us better communicators in the long run. It's very interesting. They say there's silver linings to everything. I see families get more connected, right? Spending more time together. And I think it may enhance our communication skills because we've been so accustomed to texting a few words here and there, or throwing out some message on Twitter and stuff like that. So this is an opportunity to engage in some of these uniquely human capabilities that we have. By the way, this is a little bit of an aside, but what the heck, I'm the one talking, so I could say whatever I want. And it's one of my favorite things to remark on is a statement, it's not an exact quote, but basically Sigmund Freud, the father, one of the fathers of psychiatry, was trained as a neurologist, right? So it's always been part of the neurosciences, right? So Dr. Freud just ran across this group of patients that were difficult to understand with the neurology he had been taught. And so he developed this sort of, what he called this sort of artificial language of psychoanalysis to help describe what he was seeing. But he predicted one day we'll know enough neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, and neuroscience in general that my language will disappear. We won't need these words that I've created. We'll understand how it's happening in the brain. So, sure enough, the ventral tegmental area, right, and the nucleus accumbens is kind of the reward center of the brain. That's actually where, so to speak, sex, drugs, and rock and roll happen. So that would probably be the seat of the id, of all of these impulses, of all of these urges, right? So that would be where the id flows from. We know the anatomical location of that in the brain. And then the superego, right? That part that sort of holds down the id, the inhibitory part that he talked about, turns out to be the prefrontal cortex. So in the prefrontal cortex, where the executive functions of the brain reside, we actually see these fibers that reach down into the ventral tegmental area and inhibit, right? So they hold that thing down, and that would be the seat of the superego. Now, interestingly enough, what I've just described is a little bit of a yin and yang, right? These opposing forces. So in that counterbalance between the id and the superego arises what? The ego, the self. So one person might be a little bit heavier on the superego, and their personality arises, a lot more on the regimented, sort of obsessive side. And some person might be on the other side of that spectrum. So it's that balance and friction and I guess yin and yang between those two things, out of which can arise the personality. Another interesting thing, people's sense of empathy, right? The seat of empathy turns out to be the amygdala. So if you take, and people, by the way, that get infectious yawning, right, turn out to be exceedingly empathic, right? But you can actually take pictures of people grimacing in pain and show them to someone under a PET scanner, and you see the amygdala light right up, and that's how we're showing that empathic connection. Oh my God, that a person is experiencing pain, and it must be awful for them. And by the way, if you go to say, some maximum security prison somewhere in America, where people with antisocial personality disorder reside, you will see that amygdala does not light up. That is how you could be a cold-blooded killer, right? You don't have that. You don't experience it. Nothing lights up in your brain. All right, I could kill you. So that's another interesting phenomenon as well. As we gain our knowledge of the brain and how it functions, and how it makes us who we are, we're figuring out a lot. Now, I think that there are things beyond the physicality of the brain as well. The whole spiritual perspective as well. So we're not, at least in my estimation, we're much more than just an interesting machine with lots of interesting parts that work together. We have sort of this ability to transcend all of that as well.
So another question we have is for people who might be having, whether, like you were saying, they obsess over something, or they're empaths, they might be having panic attacks during this time, whether it's
Yeah.
someone they know is going through something, or if they find themselves obsessing over the news, or
Right.
they have a cold and they're obsessing over if they have it themselves.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are any tips you can give for someone who's might be in mid panic attack?
Well, it's important to understand that no one has ever died of a panic attack, although it feels that way. So, and by the way, if you're having frequent panic attacks, I would say more than 2 or 3 a week, it may certainly be worthwhile to seek out some help with that. Now, the panic attack and the whole sort of anxiety response is an important evolutionary phenomenon, right? So we tend to focus sometimes on the emotional perspective of these things, but in fact, it's very physical, right? There's a part of the brain called the locus ceruleus, the little place that looks like a prune. Ciruela ceruleus means prune. Anyway, the little place that looks like a prune secretes adrenaline. So in the face of a threat in the environment, boom, adrenaline comes out. And what does adrenaline do? Well, it can make us hyperventilate, so we get lots of oxygen on board in case we need to fight or flee, in case we need to put them up or run away. Because of this hyperventilation, that tends to make your pH in your blood change, right? You blow off CO2, and so your blood becomes more basic, and you can get tingly sensations in your fingertips and throughout. It cuts down circulation in the limbs, so if you would get slashed, you wouldn't bleed out, and it shunts the blood to the major organs in the torso. It opens up your peripheral vision, right? So you can spot danger coming at you from the sides more easily. So it really prepares you for an emergency. If there were a bus coming at you down the street, you would want to have that system intact because it would prepare you to save yourself. Now, the unfortunate thing is if this thing is happening all the time and for no reason at all, then it can become taxing. It can begin to have negative consequences on your body and your brain. And that's when you would want to deal with, seek out some professional help with that. And there are many ways to help. There not only just medications, but certainly cognitive behavioral therapy is quite good. And oftentimes, the simultaneous use of these different things can be synergistic. So 1 + 1 = 3. When you do things together like that, you may get much greater effects as well.
So those are all the questions that we have. Is there anything else you want to add in? Maybe like mention how, people can come and they can make an appointment.
Absolutely. So you are certainly welcome to seek us out. We are glad to help and to be of service. We have a great many different technologies that we utilize to help people, not just medications. We have also techniques like transcranial magnetic stimulation that turns out to be very good for treatment-resistant depression. We have electroconvulsive therapy. We have other medication treatments that are not exactly like taking a pill. We have a very, very good intravenous ketamine program That one is actually quite impressive in that if you are a responder, you can see impressive and very rapid results from it. I've been impressed by. I know I've said the same word like 10 times. I'd be an awful author, but it's been really exciting to see that happen. There are other treatments as well on the horizon. We are involved in a lot of research at the Dent. I believe I'm principal investigator, I think, in 27 different trials right now. The Dent in general probably has close to 100 trials going on. We are America's largest neuroscience group. People come to us for help with researching new things. So we often have our ear to the ground for what's up and coming. We may be able to get you into a trial for something new. If you've tried all these different things and nothing's worked so far, we may be able to get you on board for a new trial. So there are a lot of aspects to the kind of work that we do at the Dent. We're always glad to help in any way that we possibly can. If something is just something that we don't do, quite often our different providers, doctors, and staff can reach out to other thought leaders throughout the country and find out more details. And so we're proud to be from Buffalo. We love our community. We're glad to help any way that we can. We've been here since 1963. Some of the very first work that we did actually involved Parkinson's disease. But, we welcome the opportunity to help people in our community. And now, with the espousal of telemedicine, we have actually been able to reach out. We do have people that come in from other regions and travel and come here to be seen, but now I think we will have the opportunity to expand our reach to different parts of the state and perhaps other states and help people without them having to be physically present all the time. So that's maybe one of the silver linings of this whole thing. We're really espousing these different new technologies and figuring out more ways that we can help people. So give us a call. We'll try to help any way that we can. And hopefully we'll all get through things together as part of the overall community, the sisterhood and brotherhood of humanity.
And if someone's provider is closed right now, they can always come to us, right? If someone who their doctor is closed, the office is closed, who they normally see, they can always come to Dent to schedule an appointment.
Yeah, sure.
All right, do you have anything else you want to add in?
No, I wish you all well. Stay safe, take care of yourselves. And thanks for taking some of your valuable time and listening to me. And I think together we'll get through all of this and come out the better for it.